Hi guys! So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the basics of getting started with watercolor and just a few key things to help you in your watercolor journey. A lot of us might be finding when you first start out, you don't know how to mix your color ratios. You're not quite sure why you're getting dry strokes. You're not quite sure why you're getting color just sitting on top. I want to address a couple of key things on basic things, how to get started when you first sit down to paint. And this could be you sitting down to paint anything really. So the first key thing is to make sure you've got your water, you've got a palette, you've got paper towel. Paper towel is fabulous for say you're mixing color, you got too much color on your brush, you can just quickly dab and then paint. We've got brushes. So for the brushes, I would suggest you get a thin brush that gives you a nice fine pointed tip for those finer details and maybe smaller elements that you want to paint. We typically paint flowers, so smaller flowers. If you're looking for more organic, big, luscious strokes, I would suggest something like a Princeton Neptune number 8. Look how thick this brush is. It holds a ton of water. You can really see all the water coming out in my hand over here. Okay, so two things about that, determining how to get strokes that you're looking for, whether it's fine strokes or thick strokes, okay? Then we've got color. We're going to talk about how we're mixing the color. And then last but not least, which is also very important in getting those beautiful results, is your paper. I am using the Baohong 100% cotton paper. There's different variations of paper out there. When I first started, I started out with Canson XL and it worked great for me. I've heard mixed reviews. Some people love it, some people hate it. But if you're looking for those really good watercolor authentic results, I would suggest going for something like the Baohong 100% cotton. I think it's a great place to start generically. Yeah, no matter where your skill level is at. So I'm going to start by mixing my color. Now I want to show you how to get color from your little pot or bowl of water, mine is a cup, and into your palette. So you just dip your brush, and this is how it gets activated. And you can see how there's water dripping. You can just take that and add it to your palette. Okay, and that's how you get water in your palette. So depending on how much water you want, how much color you're going to be mixing in, that's how much water you're going to be adding in. I typically start with 1 drop and then add the color to it and then build up from there. So now we're going to add some color to this. So when I add it to the paper, so another thing that I want to make a note of, and I've mentioned this in the technique section already, but holding your brush at an angle to get this full length of the brush down for thick strokes. So you get color on your sheet with less strokes and more like gradient-like smooth effects. That's why I suggest going sideways. So here's 1 stroke, and look at that color. And you'll notice that when you start your stroke and where you end it is where the color collects, as you can see. So I'm going to do another stroke. See that? Okay, now I'm going to get color directly from my color cake. So for that, I got a little bit of water on the tip of my brush. I'm getting more color directly from here. I'm going to show you what that stroke looks like over here. Do you notice the difference? This is a lot darker. And it's very, very potent. Okay. So now I'm going to get color from the color cake again, but this time I have not gotten any more water on my brush. I'm just using whatever was left over and getting more color, and now I'm going to try and do that same stroke, and here's what I'm going to get. Now you can notice the edges are a little dry. They're not as clean cut as some of the other edges we have. You can notice that we're getting short on water. Look at that. Okay. Look at that. All that white space, while it is beautiful texture, is pretty much indicating that we do not have enough water on our brush. Now there might be tons of color on the brush, but look at it. Look at how the brush is kind of moving this way. That pretty much says that it's thirsty. It needs more water. So now I'm going to get more water on this brush. So here we go. Let's try this again. Massive difference, right? I didn't get more color. I just got more water. I'm still getting a little bit of that because as soon as you add the strokes in, sometimes it needs more water. So this is how you can tell when a brush doesn't have enough water on it versus it's got good amount of water on it. Okay, so now we're going to take the number 3 and get some yellow activated. I just want to use the number 3 to show you guys the difference between this brush and the thick brush, the Neptune. So the number 3 I love for tiny strokes or tiny flowers or even tinier details. So for instance, if we're doing little flowers, again, it's nice to use the full span of the brush so that we are getting nice big strokes. So for instance, what do I mean by that? Instead of drawing in your petals like this and then painting it in like you would with a pencil, make sure your brush has enough water on it, okay? And then you're doing this. It's a lot looser and less control when you're kind of allowing the full thickness of the brush to kind of create the stroke, as opposed to you drawing it in and then painting it in. So that's the whole idea when going loose. So really and truly, if you really wanted to get a good feel for how these brushes work, just get 2 colors, use the 2 brushes, and just loose strokes. Try and paint quickly as you can, because this is how you loosen up. This is how you get more acquainted with how the brush works. We're not overly thinking. The idea is to really get acquainted with the brush strokes and see how you can practice and get results. Now, the other thing to also keep in mind is we spoke about brush strokes. We spoke about making sure when the brush is thirsty versus when it's good. Another thing is get different variations of color. So make sure you have some sections or some flowers that are thick and bright, and then some that are super light like this. So you have a nice hierarchy of elements going on in your work. Everything doesn't jump out at you because some are dark, some are light, and obviously the darker elements will jump out more versus the light. So now what you're essentially doing is allowing your eye or guiding your eye to kind of see the dark elements first and then the light elements. I'm shy from mixing colors to get other colors. So that was a lot of blue, so it didn't quite give me a green. But say if I go in this section here, I had a little bit of white there. And I'm just going to wash off my brush so that I don't get the yellow contaminated. Now I'm getting yellow. I'm going to drop that in here. I'll get some of that blue, drop that in here. We got a green. So again, when getting fine strokes for your stems, you need to make sure that A, your brush is small enough to give you that nice fine pointed tip. B, that your brush is also, like the tip of it is pointed like this, as opposed to full of color like this. I mean, because the brush is very thin, you don't quite see a huge difference here. But trust me when I say there is a lot of color on this brush. So what I'm going to do is lightly graze against the side of my palette to take off excess color. And it's kind of accumulating at the top and the rim. And now I'm comfortable with this. The C point is your brush control. So where you're lightly grazing to get these thin, beautiful strokes. Because again, it all depends on your pressure that you're applying from your hand to get these strokes. We're not pressing down anymore like we did with the petals. We're lightly grazing to get nice thin strokes. Again, this is going to take practice. You're going to have to sit there and really figure out how do you need to position your hand to get these thin strokes. It's all a science, and it all depends on how you do things. Are you left-handed? Are you right-handed? I've heard lefties have a huge problem with painting because when they're watching videos, it doesn't quite look the same, or it wouldn't quite work being a left-handed person. So yeah, you have to play around, take the technique, and really figure out what works best for you. Now, for me to get my control, I like to keep this portion of my hand, like, or my palm, on the surface of where I'm painting. And then the rest is elevated. I'm holding my brush. Notice how I'm holding my brush. And it's kind of high up there, like so. So then I'm just gonna, where can I draw in some stuff? Let's see. So then I'm just kind of resting my hand, and I'm using it like compass almost, and I'm lightly grazing and extending. Same thing again. Let's do an extension from here. For the leaves, I don't quite need my hand on the table, but that's the idea. Lots of great ways you can do this. This is just me and how I do it. Okay, so again, let's try that at the top. So I'm going to rest my hand there. I'm going to start here like a compass. Extend. Extend again. Lightly grazing to extend yet another time. And then all I'm doing is getting more water on my brush with that leftover green, and I'm painting in leaves. Okay, so that's that, guys. I just wanted to give you a very basic understanding of how these things work and how to recognize in your work when you've got too little water on your brush versus lots of color, that sort of thing. Okay, so in terms of mixing your color and the ratios, I really want you to get the hang of mixing dark, mixing light, knowing when to not add any color to your brush and just add water instead and use that leftover color to get a lighter shade of leaves or what have you. So be very mindful of these things. Like, this is where watercolor is therapeutic and fun, but it's also a huge part about being present and really knowing and noticing these little nuances in our work as we paint along, okay? So I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments what you thought, and we'll chat soon.